Red Bull has just made one last attempt to keep Max Verstappen. Want to find out the jaw-dropping salary and contract terms they've put on the table? Then don't miss this video. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. Max Verstappen's situation inside Red Bull Racing is becoming more volatile with each passing week, and the atmosphere within the team has never felt so fragile, so unnervingly unstable. The dominant force that once steamrolled the grid with ruthless precision now looks like it's spiraling into uncertainty, clinging to the fading image of invincibility it once wore so confidently. Beneath the surface of race victories and championship standings, something far more troubling is taking place. An internal unraveling, a deep-rooted crisis that no longer stays hidden in the shadows. Whispers have emerged, louder and more frequent, that Red Bull may be considering something that has never been attempted in the sport's history. Permanently integrating Verstappen's name into the team's very fabric, essentially rewriting the team's DNA in an effort to anchor the Dutch star to their future. This isn't about a symbolic gesture. It's about fear. It's about survival. It's about a team so terrified of losing its golden driver that it's contemplating a move that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. This isn't Red Bull as we knew it. This is a version of the team teetering on the edge of desperation, reshaping its very existence to align with one man, hoping that such a seismic identity shift might be enough to delay, or prevent, his departure. It's a signal to the world that the power dynamic has shifted completely, that Verstappen is no longer just their driver. He is their axis, their lifeline, their only guarantee of continued relevance in a landscape that moves fast and forgets faster. And yet, the more they bend over backwards to accommodate him, the more exposed they seem. Because in trying to keep him, they're risking everything that made Red Bull a powerhouse: their independence, their swagger, their ability to operate as a machine larger than any individual. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. The first signs of decay were subtle, but then came the cascade. One by one, pillars of the organization began to disappear. Adrian Newey, the mastermind behind Red Bull's unmatched aerodynamic superiority, stunned the paddock when he decided to walk away. His exit was not just the loss of a technical leader, it was a signal flare, a silent scream from inside the walls of a team that was starting to come apart. What followed was nothing short of an exodus. Jonathan Wheatley, a tactical genius with years of race strategy etched into his instincts, was next. Then came Laurent Mekies turning away. Then Pierre Wache's influence started to dwindle. And then, the shockwave no one could have imagined. Christian Horner was removed. A man who had been the constant face of Red Bull, through glory and controversy, triumph and tension, was suddenly gone. Not retired. Not promoted. Ousted. And why? The reasons weren't broadcast, but the implications were clear. The internal battle lines had been drawn, and Horner, once untouchable, was now viewed as a liability to the Verstappen project. The Austrian side of the company, now wielding more control than ever before, reportedly saw Horner not as a solution but as a roadblock, a figure whose presence could push Verstappen away rather than draw him closer. So they acted. Swiftly. Surgically. Brutally. In an effort to clear the path and remove any remaining friction between the team and its superstar. But here's the terrifying part: even after all that, there's no guarantee it's enough. Verstappen hasn't signed a long-term extension. He hasn't made any public declaration of loyalty that would calm the growing storm of speculation. His words are calculated. His tone is neutral. He speaks like a man who knows his value, who understands that he's no longer just a driver. He's a power broker, capable of shaping the future of whichever team he aligns with. And while Red Bull may be giving him everything, control, influence, even the potential to etch his name into the team's very identity, it still might not be enough to keep him grounded. Because when a driver reaches this level of control, the game changes. It stops being about contracts and championships. It becomes about trust, vision, stability. And right now, Red Bull can't offer any of that with certainty. The very idea that a Formula One team would consider rebuilding itself around one individual reveals the level of anxiety pulsing through Red Bull's upper ranks. It speaks volumes about how fragile their confidence has become, how desperate the leadership is to maintain the illusion of stability. But illusions only last so long. And the more dramatic the internal moves, the more obvious the panic becomes. A name change, a leadership purge, a culture reset, these aren't calculated upgrades. These are acts of a team gasping for air while trying to hold onto the one oxygen tank they believe can keep them afloat. And what if Verstappen walks away anyway? What if he watches this all play out and decides that, Despite all the upheaval, despite all the sacrifices made in his name, it's still not enough to make him stay. That possibility haunts every boardroom meeting, every closed-door discussion, every late-night phone call among Red Bull's stakeholders. Because if they lose him now, after destroying so much in the process of trying to keep him, what will they have left? Not just in terms of personnel or performance, but in spirit, in culture, in identity. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. This isn't just about a driver leaving a team. This is about a team morphing into something it never wanted to be, a fragile, reactive, personality-driven operation chasing shadows of the past. Red Bull once stood for fearless innovation, relentless competition, and a youthful energy that defied conventions. Now they stand for uncertainty, compromise, and an unsettling dependency on one man's decisions. Whether Verstappen stays or goes, Red Bull has already changed. Maybe forever. And the rest of the grid is watching, waiting, sensing that for the first time in years, the Red Bull fortress may finally be cracking wide open. Rumors echoing out of Italy are sending tremors through every paddock, pit lane, and executive suite in Formula One, and they point towards something almost too wild to believe. Red Bull Racing, the reigning powerhouse of modern F1, might be preparing to rewrite its own legacy by intertwining its very identity with that of Max Verstappen. This isn't about a commemorative patch on the overalls or a limited edition livery to honor a milestone. No, this goes far beyond mere symbolism. What's reportedly on the table is nothing short of a complete structural shift in how the team presents itself to the world. A renaming, a rebranding, a move so audacious it challenges the very fabric of what defines a Formula One team. Whether it's through the main Red Bull outfit or the ever-revolving door of identities that is their sister operation, this isn't just marketing, it's a potential realignment of power, influence, and narrative. If these discussions have even a grain of truth, we are on the brink of witnessing something that no champion, no matter how legendary, has ever come close to achieving. Not Schumacher in the Crimson Fortress of Maranello. Not Hamilton during Mercedes' era of invincibility. Both were icons, both led dynasties, but neither had their names sewn into the team itself. This wouldn't be about honoring Verstappen, this would be about orbiting around him. It would be about shifting the gravitational center of a global motorsport brand toward one man, no matter how exceptional he may be. It reeks not of confidence, but of insecurity masked as tribute, of a team so concerned about retaining its golden asset that it's willing to gamble its entire identity just to keep him close. And the most bizarre part? For all of Red Bull's dominance, their decision-making now seems laced with uncertainty. This is the same organization once heralded for its pitiless efficiency, its mastery of driver development, its willingness to chew up and spit out talent in pursuit of performance. Now, it looks more like a kingdom desperate to please its king. Verstappen, while clearly a generational phenomenon, perhaps even among the greatest to ever touch a steering wheel, is still one piece in an extraordinarily complex puzzle. He's devastatingly fast, ice-cold under pressure, and a ruthless competitor, but he's not designing front wings. He's not making power unit decisions. He's not negotiating with Liberty Media or rewriting FIA technical directives. And yet somehow his presence is expanding beyond the cockpit, bleeding into boardrooms and branding strategies, influencing not just the future of a team, but the direction of an empire. This shift is not evolution, it's distortion. Formula One has always been a battlefield of balance. Driver skill versus engineering brilliance, individual greatness versus organizational excellence. When that balance tips too far in one direction, the structure begins to warp. If Verstappen becomes the axis upon which everything turns, where does that leave the rest of the ecosystem? Where do Newey's concepts, the strategist's calculations, the mechanic's tire changes, the unseen 1,000 decisions per weekend fit into a narrative where only one name is spotlighted? It risks reducing a symphony to a solo act, turning an orchestra of innovation into a one-man show. And the danger doesn't just lie in perception. What if performance dips? What if the car doesn't suit a new regulation package? What if reliability gremlins creep in? Or if a rising star from another team starts dominating the headlines and the timing sheets? When the team's identity is tied so tightly to one individual, any downturn becomes a crisis not just of form, but of brand, of morale, of direction. The same spotlight that flatters today can burn tomorrow. Worship is a seductive drug, but in Formula One, loyalty has always been a luxury. When results fade, so do allegiances. And no name, no matter how golden, can shield a team from the cold winds of poor performance. What's truly at stake here isn't just whether Verstappen deserves this level of reverence. It's whether Red Bull is on the verge of sabotaging the very formula that made them dominant in the first place. The strength of the Red Bull system has always been its focus on the whole, not the part. It created a pipeline that nurtured talent, a machine that moved relentlessly forward, a philosophy that treated no one as irreplaceable. To suddenly shift toward deification is not just out of character, it could be fatal. Because as much as fans love heroes, championships are won by machines, systems, cultures, and processes. You don't stay at the top of Formula One by honoring history, you stay there by constantly rewriting it. And yet here we are, watching an empire flirt with idolatry, seemingly willing to bet its legacy on a single name. It's intoxicating. It's dramatic. It's unheard of. But it's also perilously close to madness. Formula One is not a sport that forgives emotional decisions dressed up as strategy. If Red Bull chooses to morph itself into a shrine for Verstappen, it might win the loyalty of one man, but lose the identity that made it feared in the first place. And once that identity slips, once the core that held everything together begins to fracture, recovery isn't just difficult, it's nearly impossible. They won't say it in interviews, they won't write it in memos, and they certainly won't admit it to themselves out loud. But behind every closed-door meeting, behind every forced smile in the paddock, the truth is already sinking in like a slow, heavy weight pulling them under. The 2025 campaign is unraveling, slipping away, fading into something no one inside the garage ever anticipated: failure. This isn't just a rough patch. This isn't just a development delay. This is a collapse in slow motion, and the panic is setting in. The RB21, hyped as the successor to a legacy of dominance, has turned into a monument to miscalculation. It promised to crush the grid. It promised to be untouchable. Instead, it's sluggish, temperamental, and unreliable. One disappointment follows another like clockwork. One failed upgrade after another. One weekend closer to irrelevance. Max Verstappen is not driving a championship winning machine, he's dragging a ghost of one. And still, he delivers. Somehow. Weekend after weekend, lap after lap, Verstappen performs miracles with machinery that deserves none of the results he squeezes out of it. But there's only so much one man can do. While the cameras focus on the victories he salvages, they don't show the bigger picture, that without him, Red Bull wouldn't be second or third, they'd be nowhere. They'd be irrelevant. They'd vanish. The stats don't lie. 7 points. That's the total contribution from everyone not named Max Verstappen. 7. As if this were a midfield team clinging to survival rather than a juggernaut aiming for another championship. Without Max, they're hollow. And everyone on the inside feels that weight, even if they don't say it. Especially because they don't say it. That's why they're cornered. That's why they're reaching for anything, grasping at straws, willing to bend any rule, cross any line, chase any hope. Not because they believe they're making brilliant moves, but because they're terrified. Desperation doesn't just change strategy. It changes character. And right now, Red Bull doesn't resemble the clinical, calculating, ruthless powerhouse of years past. It looks confused. It looks unsure. It looks scared. Everything unraveled the moment Adrian Newey left. Not because of what he took with him, but because of what his departure symbolized. The brain trust fractured. The heartbeat slowed. And in a blink, Christian Horner found himself relying on a new inner circle: Pierre Watch and Rico Balba, men who know how to run a system, but suddenly have no blueprint. Engineering calls are guesswork. Development pathways are unconvincing. Updates are released into the wild with hope instead of certainty, only to return with disappointment instead of progress. There's no rhythm. No pulse. Just chaos wrapped in optimism. They talk about pushing boundaries, but in reality, they're chasing ghosts. Verstappen is watching all of it. He may not speak it, but he feels it. Every failed session. Every wasted weekend. Every time he has to fight tooth and nail for AP2 that used to come effortlessly. He knows what winning looks like. He knows what a team on the rise feels like. And right now, Red Bull doesn't feel like either. It feels like a dynasty in decay. He's given everything: his focus, his fire, his faith. But even the fiercest loyalty has limits. Especially when the walls start shaking. There's no shortage of interest elsewhere. Mercedes isn't hiding their intentions anymore. They're circling. They're bold. They're serious. They're offering more than just a contract. They're offering a future, a reboot, a clean slate, a team built around him, not just in theory, but in practice. And that voice? That whisper that started as a question, is this still worth it? Is growing louder in his head. Because there comes a moment when even the most committed driver begins to wonder whether staying is noble or foolish. Red Bull is running out of time. Running out of excuses. Running out of options. Every race that passes without progress is another step toward an ending nobody wants to say out loud. But it's coming. And unless something radical changes, the next chapter of Verstappen's story might begin far from the team that once seemed destined to carry him forever. Loyalty has a breaking point. And Max? He's inching toward it. Toto Wolff isn't waiting for the dust to settle. He's moving fast, pressing forward with ruthless precision, making sure he's the one shaping the future rather than reacting to it. That quiet, private moment in Sardinia between him and Max Verstappen wasn't just friendly conversation. It was a mission. It was strategic. It was a glimpse into a future that could redefine the landscape of Formula One. Wolff came not with empty promises but with a blueprint, a master plan, one that could see Max spearheading a rebirth at Mercedes, commanding the team into a new phase defined by the revolutionary 2026 regulations. It wasn't about nostalgia or legacy, it was about conquest. He wants Max not just behind the wheel but at the center of a campaign to re-establish dominance, to build something unstoppable. And he made that vision loud and clear. For Verstappen, it's more than tempting. It's a siren call. An invitation to go beyond what's expected. A shot at doing what only the boldest champions dare to do, step into unfamiliar territory and turn it into holy ground. The challenge alone is intoxicating. To take a different team, with a different engine, different engineers, a different culture, and still crush the competition? That's where immortality lies. That's where good drivers become icons. There's a voice inside every great competitor that whispers, "What if you dared to leave?" And for Max, who's already conquered so much, the idea of rebuilding, of proving he is the storm no matter where he goes, is impossible to ignore. It's about rewriting the script entirely. Leaving no doubt. Creating a legacy that spans more than wins. It becomes a saga. But staying put isn't surrender. It could be an entirely different kind of greatness. Red Bull isn't just a team to Max. It's an empire he helped shape. Every record, every title, every lap of dominance. It's a thread in a story that feels deeply personal. He's not just their lead driver, he's the heartbeat of the operation. To remain would be to double down, to evolve from star to symbol. A pillar. A living legend within an organization that orbits around him. That kind of status is unheard of in a sport that devours loyalty and spits out sentiment. At Red Bull, he's not just fast, he's foundational. He's the face. The fire. The unshakable presence that gives the team its edge. And there's something incredibly powerful about staying in that position, not out of comfort, but out of purpose. The brand value he wields right now is staggering, but it could multiply if he stays. Every race, every season adds weight to his name. And that name becomes not just a racing symbol, but a global asset. A marketing machine. A gateway to future empires, whether it's fashion, tech, media, or even team ownership. The power of permanence in a world addicted to chaos cannot be underestimated. He could write his own rules, take the wheel in places beyond the paddock, become not only a racing phenom but a force in the business world. Every CEO, every global sponsor, every media empire would want a piece of that. Not because of what he drives, but because of what he means. And yet, the balance is delicate. The more control one driver accumulates, the more fragile the ecosystem becomes. Formula One is a brutal game of margins. Margins in design, in timing, in decision-making. When one individual casts too large a shadow, the checks and balances that keep a team sharp can start to slip. Dissent goes silent. Objectivity fades. Innovation slows. People defer instead of debate. That's when a powerhouse starts to fray. That's when cracks become canyons. It's easy to be the center of gravity, but dangerously easy to become the weight that pulls everything down with you. Greatness walks a razor-thin edge between power and excess, between leadership and control. Even the strongest dynasties crumble when one voice becomes too loud. So now Max Verstappen stands in front of a choice so massive, it will echo far beyond his racing years. He can leap. He can abandon what's safe and known and trusted, and try to build something monumental from the ground up with Mercedes. He can answer every critic, burn every doubt, and etch his name beside the greatest pioneers of the sport. Or he can stay where he reigns supreme, where he commands not just a car, but an empire. Where the trophies are almost expected, and the throne is already his. But with that throne comes weight. With that power comes questions. How much is too much? When does command become control? The world isn't watching casually. Every whisper, every rumor, every nod from Max is dissected, debated, devoured. Fans on every continent are glued to this story, not because it's gossip, but because it's legacy unfolding in real time. This is more than a driver switching teams. This is about power, identity, legacy, immortality. Every option is laced with glory and danger. Every step carries echoes of past legends and future dynasties. Wherever Max goes next, it won't just shift the grid, it will shift the history books. And no matter what he decides, Formula One will never be the same again. There's something looming in the distance that no one wants to talk about too loudly, something massive, something impossible to ignore no matter how many trophies are lifted or how many champagne corks pop on the podium. It's not a rumor, it's not a maybe, it's a ticking clock counting down to 2026, and with it, the most seismic shift in Formula One's technical landscape in years. What's coming isn't just a tweak to the rules or a minor update under the hood. It's a full-blown revolution in power units, and Red Bull, the current titan of the grid, is diving into it with an all-new dance partner, Ford. On paper, it sounds ambitious, visionary, even historic. In reality, it's a gamble. A massive one. A leap into the unknown with engines that haven't seen a single racing lap and a collaboration that's never been stress-tested under the brutal pressure of F1 competition. Red Bull won't be leaning on Honda anymore. They'll be building something essentially from the ground up, hoping they've got the formula right while the world watches. And that kind of pressure doesn't forgive mistakes. Now picture Max Verstappen, the relentless, precision-obsessed, performance-driven phenomenon who has rewritten what dominance looks like in modern motorsport. This isn't a guy who gets out of bed to finish in the points. This is someone whose entire being is wired to obliterate the competition, to set records so high they leave future generations breathless. So how do you tell that kind of driver that he might need to endure reliability issues? That he may need to sacrifice victories in the name of long-term development? That he might be stuck in a machine that's learning to walk while others are sprinting? The idea itself is laughable. He doesn't operate like that. He isn't built to tolerate mediocrity, and he certainly won't be content driving a car that's still figuring itself out while Ferrari, Mercedes, and perhaps even Audi tear ahead. He thrives on control, on momentum, on results. Sitting back and watching the wheels fall off, not figuratively, but possibly literally, just isn't part of the deal. But just when you think you've mapped out his future, the plot thickens. This isn't just about horsepower or podiums. There's a new layer now, something deeper, more personal, more permanent. Ownership. Legacy. Identity. It's no longer just about driving the car, it's about shaping the direction of the entire organization. Being more than just a name on the timing sheet, being a cornerstone of the team's very DNA. The idea of Verstappen having real influence, genuine control, a hand in the blueprint of a future dynasty, it's intoxicating. It's the kind of power few athletes ever touch. And for someone like Max, who's already done what others only dream of, it might just be the only mountain left to climb. It's about immortality, not just in the record books, but in the boardrooms, in the garages, in the whispers of engineers designing the next generation of Red Bulls long after he hangs up the helmet. But here's where things twist. Power isn't just shiny. It's sharp. When you're calling shots, when you're tied to decisions, when your name is etched into the project, not just as a driver, but as an architect, you own the fallout too. If the partnership with Ford doesn't deliver, if the new power unit fails under the spotlight, if Red Bull's golden era crumbles under the weight of new regulations, it's not just the team principal answering uncomfortable questions. It's not just the technical director facing the music. It's Max himself, front and center, his name in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. And once your legacy starts bleeding, no amount of past glory can completely stitch it back together. That's the paradox. The more you try to control your destiny, the more you expose yourself to the risk of losing everything you built. Verstappen could walk away now, his reputation unblemished, his records towering, his legend sealed. But walking away means leaving power on the table. Staying means embracing chaos, risking heartbreak, facing the brutal unpredictability of a new era armed with nothing but hope, talent, and belief. Every race, every press conference, every offhand comment carries more weight now. You can feel the tension in the air. Because 2026 isn't just another season. It's a fork in the road that could define the rest of Max Verstappen's life, on and off the track. Red Bull finds itself spiraling toward a decision so massive, so defining, that it could either immortalize their dynasty or unravel everything they've meticulously constructed. Behind the garage doors and polished press conferences, there's tension so thick you can almost taste it. Every smile hides unease. Every handshake conceals calculation. The facade of stability is wearing thin, and the weight of one man's influence has grown far too immense to ignore. What once was a team that prided itself on innovation, rebellion, and fearless ambition is slowly, almost imperceptibly, transforming into something else, something centered entirely around Max Verstappen. Max isn't just their lead driver, he's their sun, their axis, their entire reason for being. Red Bull doesn't simply build cars anymore, they sculpt machines tailored for one man's driving style, engineered to suit his rhythm, his preferences, his dominance. And for years, that strategy has worked like a charm. They've shattered records, crushed competitors, and owned the championship. But now, the shadows are growing longer. The price of this devotion is coming due. And no one inside that team can truly say what happens when Max starts questioning if this is still the right place for him. Toto Wolff is circling like a shark. Mercedes may not be on top right now, but they're planning for the long game. Their factory hums with energy, their simulations whisper of breakthroughs, and their entire focus is clear: lure Max Verstappen away. They don't just want to win, they want to break Red Bull from the inside. And they know exactly how to do it. By offering something Red Bull can't: a clean slate, a fresh challenge, and a seat at the table where the real power resides. Meanwhile, Max is studying every move like a grandmaster in the final stages of a world championship. He sees the weaknesses. He senses the fractures. He's analyzing more than just lap times. He's calculating loyalty, legacy, leverage. Because make no mistake, he's not just racing anymore. He's negotiating his future with every overtake, every victory, every cryptic post-race comment. He knows his value. He understands the desperation behind the smiles. And he's fully aware that the entire team would bend reality itself just to keep him in their car. But how far can you bend before something snaps? Red Bull is inching toward a point of no return, a moment where one wrong decision could implode their future. Do they keep surrendering control, allowing Max to become not just the face of the brand but the architect of every decision? Or do they try to reclaim their identity before it's too late, knowing full well that doing so might push him away? The Formula One world is hooked. Every rumor, every whisper, every clipped radio message becomes fuel for a wildfire of speculation. Fans can't stop talking. Analysts are scrambling. Former champions drop subtle warnings masked as insights. Insiders leak just enough to keep everyone on edge. And underneath all of it, the question keeps echoing through the paddock: is Red Bull saving itself by giving Max everything he wants, or are they quietly surrendering to the very force they created? The tension is unbearable. You can feel it in every interview. You can see it in every glance between Horner and Verstappen. You can hear it in the silence when difficult questions are asked. The ground is shaking, and everyone knows something big is coming. So we turn to you, because this story isn't just about engineering, strategy, or horsepower. It's about control, ambition, ego, and legacy. If you were in Red Bull's inner circle, staring down this impossible decision, what would your next move be? Would you hand Max the keys to the entire kingdom, risking your future to secure your present? Or would you dare to prepare for life beyond him, knowing it could trigger a storm no one is ready for? This is the kind of moment that defines eras, that reshapes the sport, that flips dynasties upside down. So don't look away. Don't blink. And whatever you do, don't miss what happens next. Because the most dramatic chapter in modern Formula One isn't in the past. It's coming. Fast.